You walk along a cobblestone street in London after night has already taken hold of the city. Coal smoke and the sweet tang of sour wine drift through the air, while oil lamps cast sinuous shadows on the old facades. Damp brick walls glisten with the first drops of rain. You notice dark shop windows draped in cloth and empty chairs in the nearby taverns. The silhouette of a tavern sign catches your eye, a golden goose beside a pair of amphorae, the proud emblem of the secret gathering. Crossing the oak door, the urban din falls behind, and you slip into the friendly gloom of the room, far from the clamor of the street. You still recall your first night, the evening of your Masonic initiation ritual. Blindfolded, a brother Mason led you down a narrow carpeted corridor. Reaching the center of the hall, they made you kneel before an improvised altar of boards and books. You heard candles sputtering beside an old open Bible and felt the cold metal of a sword resting against the table. Ordered to place your right hand upon the Holy Scriptures, you heard the deep voice of the worshipful master above your head. You had to swear eternal silence. At last you spoke a vow that sealed your fate. When you opened your eyes, all you saw was a tapestry of serious faces beneath their hoods. They placed upon you a plain white leather apron, the symbol of an entered apprentice, which came to rest on your lap. The echo of that ceremony still lingers in your soul, the initial fear turning to pride as you shook your new brother's hands under the dim candlelight. Now the faint glow of the candles reveals the solemn interior of the lodge room. On the walls you can make out Masonic symbols, a square and compass crossed, and two carved pillars flanking the small platform before the wooden altar. Around you, the brethren stand in orderly rows, wearing dark tailcoats and light waistcoats, upon a checkered floor of black and white tiles, like a board that measures good and evil in the world. Nearby, the worshipful master, with embroidered apron and golden collar, watches you from the rostrum. Beside him stand the senior and junior wardens, two stern men who keep order during the ceremony. Farther back, you glimpse a worn portrait of Solomon, reminding everyone of the legends of his wisdom and the sacred architecture of the temple. Every word of the ritual is spoken carefully beneath that mantle of reverent silence. In this chamber, set apart from the world, dialogues flow among notions of geometry, architecture, and morality, cloaked in allegory. You listen closely as one brother explains the symbolism of the compass. "It marks the boundaries of virtue," he says in a measured voice, while another speaks of the square as the guarantee of the rectitude of our deeds. A third stresses the importance of temperance, fortitude, prudence, and Christian brotherhood. And you notice that in each Mason's mouth, the echo of the four cardinal virtues is reborn. Now and then a murmur of an enlightenment idea arises, the latest notions of science or philosophy, shared like treasures of an ancient knowledge. Yet nothing is said of politics or church quarrels. Here only the light of reason and pure brotherhood matter. As you listen, you recognize the faces of craftsmen, merchants, even army officers, united equally in this secret assembly. Though they come from different social classes, all share the same trust. In that instant, you realize that Masonry has granted you a rare gift. You are no longer merely a humble worker, but part of a fraternity that looks to humanity's progress with the compassion of Solomon's temple. The Church of England is the official religion, and Christian tradition hovers over every secret meeting. Nevertheless, no theological disputes or partisan quarrels are allowed in the lodge. Outside, the vicars' debates and political gentlemen already rage. Here, you pay homage only to the great architect of the universe, a reverent formula to invoke God without aligning with any faction. At times, a brother reads a psalm or a biblical passage in a low voice, reminding you that before being Masons, you are devout Christians who pray on Sundays in church with the rest of the neighborhood. That small gesture strengthens something in your chest. You feel that your loyalty to the king and the faith you profess coexist without conflict with Masonic ideals. Yes, you have quietly heard rumors from Rome. It is said the Pope has excommunicated fraternal ties with a recent bull. But here, in Protestant England, few reproach your Masonic oath. When you return to the light of the ordinary world, you pray devoutly for the realm's peace. In your heart, no one questions your honor, while in the lodge, only fraternity and moral duty toward all men are exalted. When the symbolic banquet ends, each ritual concludes with a solemn, discreet handshake. The worshipful master raises a cup and shares honey-flavored rolls, toasts that seal friendship. There, by the hearth's warmth, you feel part of something eternal. When all is done, you step into the cold dawn in silence. Outside, on the corners, townsfolk whisper about the Masons. You catch voices claiming the church views the order with suspicion. Some even say in the nearby tavern that Rome speaks of confiscating books and persecuting societies. Yet crossing the street, the security of the dim street lamps fills you with calm. In England, the Grand Lodge is known and respected so long as you remain loyal to the king and promote charity. It is enough for you to feel the apron firm against your back and the staff of your trade in your hand. You keep each face and gesture from the meeting in your memory like an intimate ritual. You close the lodge door behind you. The outside world must go on ignoring the oaths sealed with your sweat. At daybreak, you leave the Masonic dream behind and return to ordinary life. You walk to your workshop with clothes dusted in marble powder and skin toughened by the cool British air. In the local tavern or church, you are simply a hard-working man. You chat about grain prices, the rainy weather, or Addison's latest novel. At the market corners, you exchange greetings with comrades who know nothing of the secret you share with your brothers in your satchel. No one suspects the man who casually sold bread beside you. This morning was your oath brother the night before. In church, you pray beside your wife and children for the realm's prosperity. The vicar's bells ring at mid-morning, and you bow your head respectfully. Blending your faith with the trust in law and the virtues you learned in the lodge, you sense that obedience to the king, instilled since childhood, now lives alongside Masonic ideals. Loyalty and justice have fused into a single flame in your chest. People in the streets mention your brotherhood again in hushed tones. They say Masons are reserved men, strange for their silent vows and symbols no one understands. You smile at those rumors. You know the lodge has internalized a key precept. About politics or faith, we do not speak here, to avoid internal divisions. That respect for secrecy is what preserves unity among brothers beyond any external dispute. Still, in your study, the newest books gleam with brilliant ideas. Newton's latest treatise, Pope's poems, Enlightenment notions from Voltaire. You absorb it all humbly, discussing in quiet tones with a brother about physics or theology without contradicting the priest. In your heart, notions of tolerance and parliamentary government begin to take shape. The club's literary conversations intertwine with Masonic principles, forging your conviction of a better world. While you pray for your neighbors, you hold the invisible compass of reason in your hands, believing that little by little good ideals can build a fairer future. When June arrives, you eagerly await the great annual feast of St. John in honor of light and brotherhood. You dress in your finest attire. The same frock coat you wore at your wedding is pressed for the occasion. You set off on the long journey to London in a shared carriage with other brothers from afar. Along the way, the green fields of the countryside pass slowly. Each mill, each farmyard sheltering the hope of meetings. Reaching the capital, workshops have already closed their doors, and the city buzzes with preparations. Fraternal banners flutter, and a grand hall has been adorned with Ionic columns imitating Solomon's temple. There you gather with masons from all over Great Britain. Perhaps you will see the Grand Master in person, maybe a nobleman who bears the title with humility. Presiding over the ceremony, before him, you swear your duties anew. The same embroidered apron, now denoting the mature master you are, rests on your hips, and you raise the compass in fraternal rites alongside hundreds of brothers. The banquet's solemnity is felt in every lifted glass, and patriotic speeches forge still more the common bond of unity with the crown. The chandeliers dazzle you. The luxurious orchestra plays familiar hymns, and you sense yourself part of something so vast and venerable. That night, the classic fraternal prayers rise like incense. You renew your vows to guard the virtue of the empire and the sacred secret that binds you together. Over the years, your shoulders have borne more setbacks and joys. You have seen Great Britain face real challenges. The union with Scotland has opened commercial bridges. Jacobite uprisings sometimes bring dark tension to the north, and the British Crown explores new seas in America and India. On that wooden bench in the lodge's Masonic temple, you have heard prayers for the realm's security. For everyone's stability depends on preserving peace. Even in 1745, when rumors of a new Jacobite rebellion chill many hearts, the brothers of your lodge pray in secret for the heir apparent and for the homeland's survival. No thirst for conspiracy stirs in you. Loyalty to the king was instilled in you as a child and burns brightly beside your faith and your oath. You feel ever more strongly that the great architect guides your hands. In daily work, when you draw wooden squares or measure bricks, you perceive the divine geometry of everyday life. You know that, with patience and rectitude, you will raise on earth a legacy as solid as the foundations of the ancient temple. On the eve of the next ceremony, as you snuff the candle for supper, you close your eyes and find yourself repeating in your mind the same ancient words of your oath. In your dreams, you see the outline of the square and compass shining on the horizon. The Masonic light accompanies you always, every step of your path. Freemasonry emerged in the early 18th century as a renewed version of the medieval stonemasons' guilds, now oriented toward cultured men who sought to debate philosophical and moral ideas typical of the Enlightenment. In England, 4 small lodges that met in London taverns, the Goose and Gridiron, the Crown, the Apple Tree, and the Punch Bowl and the Grapes, joined in 1717 to form the first Grand Lodge of England. The phenomenon soon spread across Europe. In France, the Grand Orient of France was founded in 1771, and by the mid-18th century, Masonry was fashionable among aristocrats, intellectuals, and cultivated merchants in the European centers and the American colonies alike. Masonic lodges functioned as secret fraternal societies. Their members, always men, met periodically in communications where, after an opening ritual presided over by the lodge master worshipful, they staged allegories based on the construction of Solomon's temple and the figure of Hiram Abiff, the temple's legendary architect. In these initiatory ceremonies, they advanced through degrees, entered apprentice, Fellowcraft, master, sealing the transmission of knowledge and the promise of discretion with secret handshakes, key words, and special garments. Alongside the rituals, there was always a strong emphasis on camaraderie. Masons considered one another brothers, gathered to learn moral lessons, using geometry and architecture as symbols, and to help each other. As one historian notes, Masonic ritual banquets were even seen as a duty of the initiates. They formed a complete tableau of the grand allegory of the different degrees and were usually held on festivals such as the Winter and Summer St. John. Beyond the ceremonies, a Mason's daily life included social and philanthropic activities. After the rituals, it was customary to share a fraternal meal or banquet that reinforced ties among brothers. Outside the lodge, Masons took part in charitable works for the community. They supported hospitals, asylums, or charity projects, following ideals of mutual aid and human progress that they shared with the Enlightenment. In general, new members were required to be honorable and honest. The constitutions of 1723 demanded that they be of good morals. Over time, many Masons occupied high positions in society. Army officers, nobles, enlightened clerics, and lodge membership was seen as a mark of prestige and modernity in cultivated circles. The organizational structure of 18th century Masonry was hierarchical yet self-governing. Each local lodge had elected officers: master, senior, and junior warden, secretary, orator, among others, who managed the ceremonial work and internal discipline. These lodges federated under national or regional bodies called Grand Lodges or Orients, the earliest example being the Grand Lodge of England in 1717. In 1723, Anderson's constitutions regulated Masonic order. They established that a volume of the sacred law, typically the Bible, had to be present at every meeting and that every candidate had to come from good morals. Although the male rite predominated, in 1774, the Grand Orient of France inaugurated an adoption rite that allowed women's ritual participation under male tutelage. In 18th century society, Masons occupied a peculiar place. On one hand, they were members of the enlightened elite. On the other, they met in a private sphere apart from state and ecclesiastical tradition. By upholding principles such as freedom of conscience, each member could profess his personal religion, and rejection of caste privileges. Masons created an unofficial space where fraternal equality and enlightened morality prevailed. In an age of absolute monarchies, Masonry was described as the only institution able to escape the absolutist pretensions of the state and the rigid separation of estates. In their private meetings, Masons committed themselves to moral values more than to current politics, shaping an inner arena where social divisions could be set aside. Thus, although Masonry was born formally apolitical, in practice, many of its members promoted Enlightenment ideas: equality before the law, religious tolerance, science, and reason, that would later influence revolutions and social reforms. Yet precisely because of that secrecy and intellectual influence, lodges were viewed with suspicion by established power. Authorities in various countries soon banned or persecuted Masonry. In 1738, Pope Clement XIII issued the Bull in Eminenti, condemning Catholics' entry into Masonry and adding religious reasons to the political argument. The meetings were deemed heretical for mixing believers of different confessions, something strictly forbidden by the Church then. European governments, both Protestant, such as those of Holland, England, or Switzerland, and Catholic, such as France, Spain, or Naples, issued edicts against the lodges during the 18th century, fearing that any secret association was a center of subversion and a danger to public order. In Spain, for instance, lodges became illegal from 1748 by order of Charles III. Even so, outside inquisitorial territories, Masonry kept growing. Many nobles, generals, enlightened clerics, and even some monarchs were secretly Masons, which increased its intellectual prestige, even while official discourse demonized them. That clash between admiration and suspicion shaped society's perception of Masons. Among ordinary people, rumors and myths circulated. They were seen as manipulators of political and financial power, orchestrators of international conspiracies, or followers of dark rites. Some conspiracy theorists even portrayed them as pulling the strings of the world economy or worshipping malign forces. These exaggerated views compounded real distrust from kings and priests, who by law labeled them a secret sect. Conversely, enlightened circles regarded them as philanthropists and defenders of modern liberties. As for knowledge and symbols, Masons shared a body of esoteric teaching inspired by geometry and sacred construction, who by law labeled them a secret sect. Conversely, enlightened circles regarded them as philanthropists and defenders of modern liberties. As for knowledge and symbols, Masons shared a body of esoteric teaching inspired by geometry and sacred construction, who by law labeled them a secret sect. Conversely, enlightened circles regarded them as philanthropists and defenders of modern liberties. As for knowledge and symbols, Masons shared a body of esoteric teaching inspired by geometry and sacred construction, who by law labeled them a secret sect. Conversely, enlightened circles regarded them as philanthropists and defenders of modern liberties. As for knowledge and symbols, Masons shared a body of esoteric teaching inspired by geometry and sacred construction, who by law labeled them a secret sect. Conversely, enlightened circles regarded them as philanthropists and defenders of modern liberties. As for knowledge and symbols, Masons shared a body of esoteric teaching inspired by geometry and sacred construction, who by law labeled them a secret sect. Conversely, enlightened circles regarded them as philanthropists and defenders of modern liberties. As for knowledge and symbols, Masons shared a body of esoteric teaching inspired by geometry and sacred construction, who by law labeled them a secret sect. Conversely, enlightened circles regarded them as philanthropists and defenders of modern liberties. As for knowledge and symbols, Masons shared a body of esoteric teaching inspired by geometry and sacred construction, who by law labeled them a secret sect. Conversely, enlightened circles regarded them as philanthropists and defenders of modern liberties. As for knowledge and symbols, Masons shared a body of esoteric teaching inspired by geometry and sacred construction, who by law labeled them a secret sect. Conversely, enlightened circles regarded